Forward button. Thank you so much. Righty. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the fourth of a four-part series installment for the Artificial Intelligence webinar series, AI Applications for Enrollment Planning Leaders. I'm very excited to be bringing this to you on behalf of the Lumina Foundation, the Kentucky Council of Post-Secondary Education, and the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative. My name is Errol Wint, and I am the CEO and founder of Mara Bridge Consulting Solutions. And I am partnering with Artist Kaju from Element 451. And this will be the fourth, as I'd mentioned, installment of our artificial intelligence series, where we are introducing to higher education enrollment planning leaders and enrollment stakeholders the rapidly growing, rapidly evolving world of artificial intelligence. Over the last four sessions, you've had a chance to first get a strong foundation with artists at the wheel of artificial intelligence and upping your AI literacy with some really fantastic examples, core information in terms of terminology, context, as well as some demos. And then we rolled over into the second part and gave everybody a chance to explore the skills that are needed to really operationalize artificial intelligence. From there, in the third part, we engaged everyone in some of the pressing conversations and questions around artificial intelligence from an ethical standpoint, as well as really diving deep in terms of what privacy means in this new future. And today, we are going to look at some of the practical applications of artificial intelligence and allowing ourselves to explore some different vendor tools that are being used and that are coming forward that are going to allow you to really integrate artificial intelligence thoughtfully and creatively into your future planning efforts. We hope that this allows you to go back to your respective campuses. For those watching across the nation, for you to go back to your respective stakeholders in your respective admissions redesign projects and introduce artificial intelligence from a place of knowing and thoughtfulness, and continue the journey of educating yourself around what artificial intelligence is. Without further ado, I'm going to pass it along to Artist to take us away for part 4, AI applications. Artist.
Thanks, Errol. That's great. Well, this is the last one. Hopefully you've had a really good experience going through this, and then you've kind of taken a lot out of it. We are recording all of these sessions, so they'll be available for you as well. So one of the things that, when we think about enrollment and enrollment leaders, we care a lot about the student journey, and we care a lot about providing a more student-centric journey from admissions or from top of the funnel all the way to graduation. Enrollment is a very holistic kind of approach to how we think about guiding those students, recruiting those students. It's not just admissions, it's enrollment. We talk about student success a lot in that. And a lot of us are focused on different areas, but thinking about holistically from awareness to consideration to conversion to success, and that becoming more and more of a lifelong learning approach to how we attract these students. It's even more important today to understand and to personalize those student journeys. And the digital savvy, the students are very digital savvy today, and they really expect very fast, very convenient, very personal experiences, right? They expect very consumer-like experiences today, similar to the Amazons, to Netflixes of the world, even the DoorDash and delivering their stuff to the door. So we've all gotten used to this consumerization, and we need to be able to provide that experience as we kind of, market to them, as we kind of bring them into our institutions, and as we have them go through our processes, right? Introducing friction usually translates to lower conversions from one stage to another, or lower basically satisfaction, or even somebody leaving and transferring, and so on and so forth. So when we think about that, then the other part is that a lot of them are getting used to technology mediated interactions with us. No longer do we have the Of course, we do have our one center, or we do have our campus offices. However, most of the engagements, it's happening through technology, it's happening through mobile, it's happening through this technology mediated component, and we need to be available there 24/7, or we need to provide that 24/7, because that's the experience that they're having with that consumer brands as well. However, from an institution's perspective, I mean, let's be real, right? We're facing a lot of talent gaps. It's not because for most of us, we have at least one, two, three open positions today that we can't fill, right? We have talent that we're trying to upskill very quickly. We also are really, like, our teams just can't deliver on the targets that we're setting ourselves up and what the students is expecting on the other side. And this is where I believe, and we believe, and that's why we're having these conversations, that AI really can help in a lot of these areas, right? And that's why we're talking about that today. And again, the AI has really the potential to revolutionize education, really making it more personalized, engaging, and effective. And this is not just on the teaching and learning side. Sal Khan focuses a lot on the teaching and learning, but I wanted to highlight this because when we think about education, we think about the whole educational experience, from how that student is coming to campus to all the way down to the student success side of the house. And when we look at AI, we talk about what the opportunity is. Generative AI has the opportunity to put so much productivity into our hands and improve those experiences. And we've talked about this before, where we said sales equates to the admissions and the recruiting, the marketing aspect. And of course, we talk about the customer operations areas, which is student success and student retention. So that's us, right? Like, that's the areas where Gen AI has the most impact. And that's what's happening in other industries as well. These technologies are becoming part of that operation and part of that customer experience and in how we're going through it. So when you think about it, then in higher education, we're going to focus today on some of the practical applications around student experience and the productivity side from the staff. So remember, we talked about how do we improve that experience on the expectations, and how productive our staff is in order to make that one person feel like 5, or more productive feel like 10, right? And when we think about that, on the experience side, we talked that providing a 24/7 chatbot in front of everything that we do, or this AI, generative AI powered chatbots, is really, really important to answer a lot of those questions and to go through that. Hyper-personalized marketing is really important as well, and AI can help us with that. And last but not least is around the proactive outreach. How do we make sure that we're proactively outreaching to those students? And we talked a little bit about that last time, or throughout this series. On the productivity side, most of the work that we do is generate content, right? Just write emails out, reply to communications, and then find information or knowledge discovery. How many classes do I need to take for this? How many, what's the process for X? Reviewing those applications. So all of these pieces are things that we do on our side in order to on the productivity, to kind of figure out information and pass that along. And then last but not least is on the actionable insights, like how do we come up with what's working, what's not working, and how do we do data analysis, and how do we understand the numbers, right? What are the numbers telling us, so we can take better actions later on. So AI can help in all of these different areas. So I wanted to kind of put that into perspective, because as we take a look at some of the components or tooling, it would make a lot of sense then. All right. So obviously, for a lot of us, ChatGPT has been the poster child, right, for generative AI and productivity boosting. And it's actually a chatbot, right? So it was one of the fastest growing, but it was really, really good. So before ChatGPT, we didn't really have a lot of really great chatbots out there. And here is one, for example, that, here's kind of the interactions that we might have had with chatbots. And we call it BC, right? Like before ChatGPT era, where the bots are really dumb, right? They don't really understand a lot of things, and they're very rule based. If this, then that, right? So very rule based, and they're not really, they're kind of doesn't they don't understand much, and they're not empathetic. And then even when they're trying to be empathetic and try to understand, they just don't get it. They don't get the context, right? So they just fall flat. So we did have a lot of these experiences before, myself including, when I went to, like, a lot of companies try to put chatbots as part of customer support, but they always fell flat, right? It was just always they couldn't do something, they didn't understand it, and it just make you feel really, really kind of dissatisfied with that brand. It may sometimes make you feel pity, and sometimes it makes you feel really, really bad that this was experiencing. So when we look at how we work with technology and how, as humans, we perceive technology, we kind of look at it through the lens of how we interact with other people on the other side, with other human beings. And there's two ways that we think about it, right? Our lizard brains are kind of conditioned to think about it that way. One of them is, what is your what is your intention towards me, right? When you see somebody new or you meet somebody new, like, is that that's the warmth part, right? It's like, are you a friend? Are you a foe? Are you trustworthy, honest? What is your intention? Like, are you and then how likely are you to carry out that intention? That's the competence part. So when you think about competence, it's like, are you capable, intelligent? Are you skilled and able to do that, carry out that intention? And we project this around technology as well. So when we interact with a piece of technology, we call ChatGPT he, she, or something that we call Alexa a she, or Siri, depending on what voice you have, a he or a she. So we project this same attributes to technology, and no wonder then when we look at it through that lens, we really like, if the technology is really warm and able to connect with us and have that competence to do things, then we admire it. And that's where ChatGPT falls. But those prior bots, they're really like, we have pre 2018, that bot really, like, we have contempt for it. It just wasn't able to do what we needed it, and it wasn't really kind of conversational with us. And even when it was conversational, it just couldn't do what we needed, so we just feel pity for it, right? And as we have moved forward and we looked at ChatGPT, it was actually the first type of technology and first type of application that we saw that embodied that ability for us to get really, really great content, have a conversation with it, just like another human, and produce really great results for us. So we really admire it, right? And that was the first conversational interface that we saw that happened that way. And now when you put those two pieces together, right? We've talked about how natural language interfaces, and you put in the reasoning engine, this large language models are really a reasoning kind of engine in the background, because they can they're trained with so much data. Now they're able to kind of put these two pieces together, and we think about how the interaction with technology and how interaction with applications looks like in the future, where every sector and every technology company is injecting this new mode of working with our tools, with our technology. We talk about before ChatGPT, and we call it BC, right? Or at least that's how I call it, before ChatGPT. But we had things like Bing Chat and Claude and Anthropic. We have Microsoft Copilot, Salesforce Einstein, even Element. We introduced our BoltBot and our Copilot last year. So a lot of companies are moving in that direction of introducing and having the interfaces become natural language interfaces through chat or through audio or through even through video going forward as well. So that is kind of how we're interacting with technology to make it more human-like, and we can ask it things and then it can do stuff for us rather than us clicking a whole lot of buttons, right? And Element, we like we've done exactly that in the past, where we've kind of progressed the technology over time, and we'll take a look at some of that stuff and how that technology progression looks like. But if you think about it, we started last year our journey with incorporating generative AI. We just had these big models, and the first thing that we could do with them, in embedding them into our products and kind of embedding them into the applications that we're doing, is things like the writing tools, right? So we embedded, and we see capabilities like this where it can generate something, like it can make something shorter, it can make something longer. And you're seeing these capabilities be injected in all of the products that you're probably using today. But an element, we inserted it as part of conversations and communication, so you can change the tone. It's right there in your conversations. So that was the first iteration of this, right? And it was great because now you can replace something like Grammarly. You don't need to use that anymore. It's embedded into your product. It's embedded in whatever you're using every day. You're probably getting something similar for this, Copilot, and so on and so forth. So that's the first kind of wave of the generative AI tools. Now, the second part is like you overlay, you're like, okay, great, I can do this one-shot stuff. I can even go to ChatGPT and paste that content and get back something else. However, ChatGPT doesn't know about me. It doesn't know about my institution. It doesn't have any of the knowledge of my institution. So how can it personalize things for me so I don't have to tell it all the time, here's my content, here's my content, here's my content? Well, that's when the knowledge layer comes along. Now we can bring all of the institutional knowledge into a database, or basically the database layer, and then this large language models can actually operate on that. They have memory. They basically now gain memory. So in our applications, when we look at it every single day, we're now able to build things like conversational chatbots that remember stuff. So that's what we built in Element. We built BoltBot. And again, I'm going through a progression here where it has the ability to remember things, and because it's very conversational, so now it can answer questions based on your content, on the school's content. So it's able to do a lot of those things for you. So moving forward then, that knowledge, it's not just that knowledge from kind of a history of conversations, or not just your website. It can bring in institutional knowledge. It can bring in kind of student data profile information. So you combine all those pieces together, and then these chatbots become very smart. These AI bots become very smart, and they're using large language models, and they're using generative AI in order to come up with the question, with the answers. So they're very conversational, right? And they know about you, and they know about your content and your knowledge. So think about that as you're evaluating tools to inject in, to bring in new chatbots or new capabilities. At Element, that's kind of what we've done, and that's why these are very smart, powerful, very fast, and they're secure because your data stays in your tools and stays in your CRM, and they're very capable, right? They're able to respond in a very human-like way, and provide that information, and retrieve information that is yours, and provide that to students. And you don't have to program it, like you don't have to upload your questions. It's basically you just point it to your data sources, and it's able to kind of remember all of that stuff without you having to think about what are the questions that are going to be asked, and then like basically pre-build those. You don't have to do that anymore. So that's the ability there. And when you look at it from a use case perspective, this is Foresight Tech. They're in one of the schools in North Carolina, community college here in North Carolina. But when you look at it, they implemented BoltBot, and they saw a dramatic change in their inbound calls, about 24% decrease. And this is just within those first 3 months that they implemented this, right? And they saw almost an 80% resolution, meaning that the bot was answering 80% of the questions that were coming in. And they have a really interesting model where all of the support is going through a centralized kind of office where everybody understands all the questions, and they now are able to reduce that team, or not reduce, but they were able to handle an additional 2 to 3, the equivalent of 2 to 3 additional people, conversations, and save that amount of time. On top of that, they during this time they had a 12% increase in enrollment as well. So more students, less phone calls coming in, probably happier and better responses because people were getting what they needed about 80% of the time, 24/7, right? So 24/7. So huge ROI, and just within a very short period of time, 3 months, right? And the equivalent time of multiple people. Now, okay, that's great. So chatbots are good, but how about like they need to, like AI needs to help administrators as well based on doing their day-to-day work, right? They need skills just like we do. We have skills. We need marketing help. We need strategy help. We need kind of campaign development help. So all of those pieces, and we need to work within our tools. So that's when you add this third layer, the skills ability, then you get something like an actual, a staff or a teammate that can help you with all those things that you need, because now they have the skills, they have the memory, and they have the knowledge on how to do them or where to get the content. And they have this very powerful engine that can be very conversational. So you combine all those three things, and you get AI assistants, right? So you get these assistants that can help you with design, they can help you copywriting, campaign strategy, marketing, data analysis, and they're embedded into the tool itself. And here's an example that we're going to go through it. Rather than me doing a live demo, so you can come into the CRM, say, catch me up. And what's happening is that it's providing you with what do you have to do for that day? You go in, it says, okay, here's a bunch of tasks. It goes in. There's too much in that profile. You want to summarize. Let me summarize the contact information and what's happening here. It's providing a summary in real time and compressing all that information. Now I was like, okay, what's the best recommendation for me to outreach to the students so they complete their application? The model provides some feedback here, and I'm going a little bit too fast, so I'm going to pause that just there for a second, because I sped that up on purpose. But it's basically providing some of that information back to us to say, okay, here's some of the things you might want to do for that particular. And let me move my Zoom here really quick. So if I go in here, you're going to see that it's making some recommendations. To complete the application, consider these outreach strategies. Personalize your messaging, use ongoing campaign or workflow of routine reminders, ensure that you have deliverability, but then respect SMS opt-outs and so on and so forth. So it's like, would you like me to craft you an SMS message? Because that's what it determined to be the right one. So, or even an email. So we do that, we continue, and then it says, well, okay, I can send this to you, but there's another recommendation. Do you want to maybe build a whole campaign? So you can send this to more than just Jay. You can send it to a lot more people. And in this case, it's like, yeah, let's just build a campaign out of it, right? So now you can see that there is a handoff to a campaign assistant. And the campaign assistants understand, it's like, who is this campaign targeted to? And I'm going to do another stop here, because this is, again, something interesting, is that sometimes as experts, we try to pull information out of end users, right? And we, as marketers, I'm like, okay, when you have a marketing campaign or marketing, I need to understand who you're sending it to, what's the goal, what are you thinking in terms of channels? Give me some more information, context. So that's what these AI tool is doing, is like, it's kind of going through that whole process. And as we go through that, we now provided a little bit more interest. And then it's coming back and saying, okay, here's an outline of what we think this thing can do for us. So it's going ahead and putting that together for us. And then I'm like, okay, let's just build it. So now, because it's integrated as part of the tools, it's able to write those messages for us. It's able to then write all the SMS messages. You notice that there is things like application link, like short tokens in there that you can insert, saying knows as part of the tool. And then, as it goes through, then it starts building that whole campaign, right? So you can see that it actually completed the whole thing on the right-hand side. And when you click on it, it built a whole flow, right? It built that whole flow within the tool. So that's what we're talking about AI assistance. It's like handing something off to a teammate that is really, really good at the kind of building this stuff, actually multiple teammates, like a whole team. It's like you just don't hand it off. You hand it off to the marketing manager and you say, hey, I need to reach a campaign about this. And they're like, great, I'm going to hand off a brief to my writers, and I'm going to hand off a brief to my email builder, and I'm going to hand off a brief to my photo editor so they can pick the right images. And that's exactly what's happening here in the background. It picked the right images. It wrote the right messages. So it did all those things, and you can see all the message, all the images that get returned as well. So we know exactly what's on those images. So that's what the future is like, or that's actually here today, around building interactions or having a teammate that can have skills with generative AI that's baked right within those tools. And I'm going to continue this, but now it's like, well, wait, hold on. It's like, what's the next layer here? It's like we start thinking about it from the student side. There was just that one chat bot, but what if now that student needs to, like, we need to have multiple chatbots that are specific, and they have different personalities, right? Or different personas. They have a student peer, so they're communicating around admissions. And if the student is in the admissions landing page or page, only those bots are available. If they're somewhere else, if they're in the current students portal, only those bots are available, right? An academic advisor is available. So we start thinking about these as not just one tool, but we think about them as a team, a student support team as well, that can have goals on their side. So that's the last layer in orchestration. And we're thinking about them now as orchestration, personality plus goals equals that orchestration. That's where we get both for personal support squad for the students. So now we have financial aid advisor, you have an admissions advisor, you have a student peer, you have a program advisor, and these can work together and can hand things off from one to the other, very similar to how you saw before, but it's a little bit more nuanced here, or it's a little bit more visible. So let's take a look at how that looks like from a student side. So they come into the website, they open up a chat, and they call in Helen as the peer advisor. They want to say, hey, Helen, I like to live on campus. What's it like living on campus, right? And she provides a little bit of information. We want to know, I'd like to visit campus. And Helen provides and says, hey, there's there's an open house. And by the way, here's a link directly so you can register for that open house right within the chat component, right? As if somebody was going to call in. It's like, oh, I already put your name in here. Why don't you just reach out? Well, here's the link so you can register directly for that. So we go ahead, we go to the open house, we come back and say, open house is great. I'd like to apply. Well, guess what? Now Helen is like, well, I'm going to hand you off to Carolyn, which is our admissions advisor around applications. And Carolyn knows what the process is and knows what to provide you. Carolyn then comes back and says, well, okay, well, would you like to apply for an undergraduate, or we have two applications, undergraduate or graduate application? Because it's really integrated with the platform, it's integrated with the data. Remember those skills, right? There's coming back into play now. It understands that it has access. So now you can pick the undergraduate application, and she's like, great choice to proceed. please provide your email. So it's collecting data for you, and it's actually starting an application for you, and it's giving you a personalized link that you can follow up, and you can go in and automatically log into that application. So it's all seamless through the orchestration. Now, you didn't see here, but one of the things that just happened is that the next phase is, hey, Artist's mom comes in, and let's say she doesn't speak English, but she's like, I have a question, but she just types in Spanish, right? And the Carolyn now understands that and responds back in Spanish and says, "How can I help you?" Right? My mom says, "Hey, I have a financial aid question," and she's like, "You know what? I can't help you that, but I'm going to transfer you to Luke, which is our financial aid advisor." And Luke comes in and says, "Hey, how can I help you? What type of question do you have specifically?" So it says, "Well, when is the financial aid deadline?" And of course, it can come back and it provides that information about financial aid. And in addition to that, it's all in Spanish, right? And it provides a link to where that more information can be pulled together. So we didn't load in any Spanish information. Is that these model, like this assistants are able to speak multiple languages and convert your knowledge base from English that you're going to point it to any other language, right? And it's really up to the end user. So now this opens up a lot of possibilities for supporting, ESL students, or supporting, a lot of different kind of populations that traditionally you might not have interacted with, or you don't have somebody who can speak that language and provide that answer. And this is all happening in real time, right? And again, if you look at this, it's like going back and it remembers the whole context of the conversation. So it says, "Hey, thanks a lot. Hope I answered your questions for you and Artist," right? Because it remembers the whole thing. So that's the future of AI-powered student support and AI assistance when it comes to the student side, right? So you saw how we can build content, we can help, these assistants can help us analyze, whole summaries, can kind of help us with our tasks every single day. From the student side, we see how these teams can work together. But again, like that's, like we say that the future is here today. However, we start thinking about adopting these tools internally as well. All right, so let's move on. Let's move on to kind of our main place where students find this information, right? And our websites are traditionally the main entry point where students find the information. And the way that they find that information on our websites today is that, and this is a survey from the eTrends survey. I think RNL puts this survey out. This is the 2023 survey. A few thousand students in high school have responded to this one. But when you think about like what's the front door to your institution is your website, and how students find that information. 57%, they say that they use the navigation on links on their website. 46%, they say they use their search tool. 30% say they are linking directly from emails. They're going to your emails and they're clicking directly on those links to find it. 23% say they're finding it through planning websites, things like College Board and so on and so forth. And then only 9% is chatbots. So yes, chatbots are gaining a lot of flexibility. And this is 2023, by the way. This is last year. So chatbots aren't capable today. So that's why that number is so low. However, when you think about it, the model has completely changed from the other side, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And when you think about the questions, how many of you are actually using the website? It's 93% of those students saying that they're using the website to find information. And, again, how many of them find them helpful is lower than that. But as you go through this data, the next thing is like, well, okay, well, what's the top 5 things that students find frustrating about a college's website, right? And the number one thing is really hard to find information about specific majors and programs. We get really amazing kind of brochure like websites that pull up a bunch of stats and things like that. But as the demographics are changing and students care a lot more about the value of education, they care more about like the outcomes and so on and so forth. You're seeing that those are being reflected in what type of information they're looking for. The second is like they're confusing they say there's confusing directions related to the admissions process, right? So that's another area of opportunity. So remember, we talked about removing friction, right? As much friction as we can remove, the better our processes are, the better enrollment we can have, the faster the student can go through that process, the happier they are as part of that, and the conversions go higher. The more friction, conversions go lower. Um, Hard to use navigation, hard to use links, lack of information about job related opportunities and majors, lack of information about admission statistics, how many students like me. So people care about knowing about, students like them, or like what the outcomes are. So again, this is from the 2003 e-expectations trend report, with a few thousand high school students being interviewed and being questions about and surveyed around this. So as we think about this, then our websites become another huge opportunity for us to use generative AI tools for making this available. And I wanted to kind of provide kind of a path around how information accessibility has been around for our websites, because we see the frustration, but the way that websites and this main form of information has gone from IA, or information architecture, to AI, or rather artificial intelligence. So information architecture is back, let's say 10, 15, 20 years ago, when the first websites came around. We all vied for how many links can we add to the homepage, and what programs and what departments were on the homepage. So it was all about how we thought people wanted to consume our information, right? So the power is in our hands. Well, fast forward, then Google came along, and now search engine optimization became really important, right? So search was one of the main mechanisms for how people access information, they find it. So we brought in the power on the people's hands, so they now can go directly to your webpage without actually figuring out the information architecture, right? Even though still a lot of people do that, but I would say right now the number is around 57 or 58% of people and students, they actually, from that same survey, they go to Google and type in the university name or type in your website in order to, so they use it as a navigation to go to your website. So they're still using search in order to do that, but they're going directly to a particular page or whatever in there. Now, fast forward to where we are today. AI has opened up and they're using ChatGPT to find answers, right? And that is over the last year becoming more and more relevant, including things like Google introducing a AI overview now to your search queries. So that was introduced last week as part of Google's new initiative, because they're realizing that the trend is changing and people are using these chatbots to find information, right? So when you think about it, then what happens here is that how do you have a semantic search? How do you bring that together where somebody's trying to find information, and generative AI? What happens if you bring those together? What happens if you bring Google, the search capabilities, and you bring ChatGPT together in order to provide a better experience for your students in your website? And that's what at Element we said, okay, you know what? This is a huge opportunity. We already have the knowledge base that is powering our chatbots, and all the knowledge is available. It's powering our marketing. Why don't we now put those two pieces together, and we call it Bolt Discovery? So it's like AI powered search that is replacing, your search bar. It is replacing your FAQs. It is replacing perhaps even your program finders. And I'm just going to go ahead and it kind of does things like the generative AI Q&A, does follow-up questions. You can capture leads as well in that flow. You can share threads. So as you explore, you can share those threads. And then we can even search things like YouTube videos and the content of those videos, so we can give answers based on video content. You can also embed it anywhere, and it's easy to integrate with your website, right? So that's what we thought. I would like, we really need something like this to eliminate the friction of where those students are coming in. And that's, again, that's what we're calling our bold discovery here. So I wanted to kind of give you a very quick preview of what that looks like. So I'm going to share my screen here again, and let me open that up really quick. Here we go. So this is a landing page, just like an RFI landing page, or even can even be your home page or something. Again, this is Foresight Tech. You have your chatbot that comes up. However, you can, like, you have your search here as well, university search. And if you ask over here, it says your questions answered, ask anything. We also can inject certain, depending on where you are, what pages you can inject, and you can say, hey, here's some starters. And we can come in here and we can ask some questions. We can ask anything, but let's say, what can I study at Foresight? So we click on that, and it automatically fills in my question in here. So this is the Bolt discovery experience. And what it's doing is, you can see that rather than just giving you links to your programs and things like that, it's actually giving you, it's saying, hey, here's where I pulled all those resources, all the pages, but I'm actually providing you with a top list over here. So I can continue this conversation in this thread and say, okay, this is great. But rather than doing that, it's actually going ahead and providing suggestions to me on what, like, for example, some of the sample suggestions, which are generated dynamically. What are the admissions requirements, right? It's like, oh, of course, yeah, what does that mean? So now it's going in and pulling from that knowledge base and generating those admissions requirements for us. I can ask it, I can continue with follow-up questions. Tell me more about the admissions process. Are there any specific requirements for international students? Well, I can also say, what classes do you have in coding, let's say, right? So I can ask it that type of question if I'm interested in it, and it'll continue that conversation for us. So really, so you can see, because we loaded the catalog as part of that knowledge base, it's actually pulling in the catalog information in here as well. So you can see all of the different kind of resources that it's pulling that information, but it's providing it in a very, very concise way. So you have C++, Python, C#, web development, and I can go in, and it's anticipating. It's like, can you tell me more about the IT program and software? What are the prerequisites? How do I enroll in it? What kind of jobs can I get with his skills? So this kind of flips the whole discovery and the student experience on your website on its head, right? And there we go. So now it provides some of that information, and it's saying, what is the average salary? It's like, oh, it's like read my mind. I'm like, it's providing me the jobs, but it's like, what is the average salary for some of those? So it's kind of pulling that information here as well. So this is really, again, really important in removing that friction. It provides dynamic questions afterwards, and those are generated based on the answers, right? Those are dynamic. So think about it as like a flow. So here we go. It's like it said, oh, because we haven't loaded any of that information, it says I couldn't find specific salaries, which is a really good answer, right? Because we didn't load any of that for this specific knowledge base, but we can go back and load some of that information. We don't want it to make things up, right? Which is really, really good. And that goes back to that. So the other part is like, I'm like, hey, I would like to learn more information about this and have a team member follow up. Well, guess what? I'm actually adding that. I can accept an inquiry in here, so I can say, hey, this is artist two, and then artist. So I can now capture that information and I can come back. Now I can share this thread, right? And I can share it, and I copied a link in here. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to paste this in my in the chat, so you guys can kind of take a look at it for yourselves. But let's you can pick up the conversation. It's not going to change my conversation, but you can share it with other folks. All right, so rather than and if there's any questions, just post them in the chat, but I'm going to move back to the presentation and switch back to it unless there is any questions about this. All right, so let's switch back to the presentation. So well, guess what? The presentation is over because we showed you a lot of the tools and a lot of the friction. But that's essentially what we've been talking about this, over the past 45 minutes is how do we go from you know removing all this friction, taking a look at the different areas where we can replace artificial intelligence and we can improve the student experience and the staff productivity. I'm happy to kind of take any questions, or Errol, if you think it's appropriate to kind of go into some other specific areas, would be happy to do that as well. But I figured that this is quite a few tools that can help us through that journey of improving students. There's a student experience, making faster, easier, 24/7, multilingual, helping all the parents, and then helping on the content generation side and helping our staff, productivity as well.
Yeah, thank you, Artist. I appreciate that. I do have a couple of questions that I want to open up for you to engage, and then if there's any questions in the audience, you all can certainly ask that. So there's a part of the presentation where you talked about the various roles, the campaign assistant, the marketing designer. They all had a particular role. In the future, where everybody's going to be using AI. I think I'm thinking a lot about how now when you've got these large companies, which you are not, I want to point out to the audience, which is one of the reasons we brought you on. But when you have these large companies that have vast number of clients and if they have a vanilla kind of approach to messaging and to marketing, and everything looks the same, how is the future where everybody has AI and everybody is feeding their chatbot and everybody is pumping out a similar kind of construct, how is value proposition differentiation going to go in that kind of context?
Yeah, so there's two ways to think about it. It's one of them is how fast, like there's early adopters and there's an early adopter differentiation and value capture. So
Right.
early adopters, there's sometimes risk, but most of the time there is reward. So the reward is that now you're able to do a lot more, provide better experience to that student, and somebody can come in and say, how did you send out thousands of personalized messages, like within like minutes of actually having decisions ready, or some event happening? How did you do that? And AI can power you through that. So the differentiation is, can you, like, how fast are you go to market, right? And Element, we've been at the bleeding edge of these capabilities. So when you think about differentiation, that's how we think about it. Like we're not only are these tools ready, but people who are adopting it are seeing huge ROI from them very, very early on. And then the other part is around how do you think about the personalization of these tools to you, right? So they're not the same, or they're not, they're so that's another area that I can say anything that is built and you see today is really, really personalized to your institution. So it's a matter of like how fast or how easy and how less time you need to dedicate to these resources in order to make them personal. So that's comes out of the out of the box, right? Out of the box, they are very customizable with very little effort, because we now can go and tap into already existing data sources. We bake out of the box these different personas that we build, and there's a lot of secret sauce there, right? There's a lot of secret sauce. So because we've had the time to evolve on it, because we're kind of at the bleeding edge, what you're getting is best of breed, and a lot of the secret sauce that we've tested over time, personalized to you, so you can have you can go to market really fast.
Got you. Thank you for that response. Okay, so my next question, I've been in the industry of enrollment management, enrollment planning for 15 years, over 15 years. And when it came to the architecture of a campaign, I recall having a human being on my marketing team that would not only create the sequence, but also the content. But now with AI is going to be able to facilitate that. And I think back to some of the earlier parts of your presentation when we talked about prompt engineering. How
Mhm.
important is it going to be to have somebody that is and has that expertise on your staff around prompt engineering in order to go from just simply the traditional, campaign architect to the campaign architect that integrates AI at a very thoughtful manner?
Yeah. So I mean, experts are always going to become important, right? And experts can actually do a lot more now with a lot less. So their skills are being amplified. But when you think about prompt engineering and somebody needing to know prompt engineering, uh, that is going to be transformed, and you're only going to need it for maybe another year or two as you're using the more generic tools. So you're not going to need prompt engineering, let's say in a year and a half or 2 years. Your element is just happens to be ahead, and we're baking a lot of that underneath. So all you have to do is in your domain knowledge, like in admission speak or enrollment speak or marketing speak, you can ask it those questions, and it's able to infer in the background. And so we're handling the prompt engineering, so you're not communicating with this large language models in a raw way. Um, but so going forward in the future, you're not going to need that, right? It's about a conversation, and you have to find the tools that are very specific to your domain. They can understand and have already baked in that persona, or that information or that knowledge in the background and the secret sauce. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I believe that is absolutely, we're moving to a world where these tools are not, you don't need to do a lot of prompt engineering to get what you want out of it.
Right, right. No, that does answer my question. Thank you. The other observation from today's presentation was around the ability for AI to have multiple languages, and I think that was always a challenge for a cash-strapped operation that where we couldn't hire human beings to possess the kind of dual languages, especially some of those periphery languages to engage
Yeah.
around financial aid, as you showed in your example, and other steps within the process. Um, I have memories of as you showed the iterations, the chat of AI or the Google chat that had the really weird translation. Is any
Mhm.
of that, are you seeing any issues with translation fidelity in terms of it sounding smooth? And does that tone ability carry over with the translation where you were clicking on ChatGPT and showing friendly and goofy and all of that? Does that carry over and capture the cultural interpretation of what friendly may sound like? Because friendly is not the same in Germany as it is in America, right? And as it is in South in a country in South America, right? So that's my question.
Yeah. So the models, the answer is yes, it does carry over around translations. Think about translation as I'm just responding to something, and I have all the knowledges in the world, and all I'm doing is just responding in one language or another, right? So I'm not responding in English and then translating that into a different language. It's happening in real time, responding in that particular language, because I have it's like a multilingual person. It's like
Right.
it's not like you're not going through a translator in this case. So to answer your question, yes, I do believe that it translates, and the nuances of certain languages are coming in because the models are trained in those languages as well. So it's the concept that sometimes comes through, or the model is or the AI is thinking through, but the how it manifests that concept through is through that languages norms, right? Because it's not a pure translate, it's not a word to word translation just like you used to in the past. It's
Right.
like a concept. The whole concept is like, you know, it's kind of it's done that way all at once.
Yeah. I'm going to keep going with questions to our audience because I'm a very curious person, and I'm also wanting to ask questions that I think enrollment managers think about. So obviously, enrollment management on the front end, we think about recruitment and enrollment, but there's a, a an increasingly important focus on retention, keeping who you
Mhm.
have, right? And when I saw, when I saw Bolt in action, the tool that you demoed, what I really liked that I saw was the loading of the class catalog and then the recommendations in terms of the courses that were to be had. And I thought a lot about my colleagues over on the academic advising side that help in the orientation phase and then
Yeah.
moving forward, that have massively large caseloads, and also look for relief points. Are you looking to integrate this in that side of the enrollment planning world, and how do you envision the academic advising side of the house really optimizing AI through a tool like Bolt?
I mean, that's exactly it, right? So we're trying to take different kind of use cases and try to look at that particular job that is the job to be done, in this case academic advising, and say how can we amplify that, right? How can we amplify that one person can now handle? It can say, hey, why don't you go ahead and start here, why don't you go explore this, and by the way, send me a thread to me so I can see what your process was or how you're thinking about it. And
Yeah,
by the way, let's schedule now an appointment. So if you didn't get your answer, we can schedule an appointment and I can see exactly what your thread is and what, how you went through and what your questions were. So I can see that in the background now. But the AI did 95% of the work to guide you through, because all I would have done is said, well, okay, are you interested in this? And it's all the discovery questions that are important, right? And we're trying to bake that in there so the human then can be the last validator and can say, okay, now you take that information and let's actually register for this class, or let's register for that,
yeah,
or in order for you to complete it you might need this other thing. But that's the last mile, right? Like
yeah.
the AI has done all the heavy lifting before that.
Yeah, yeah, no, I hear that, and this is where I'm going to use the term informatics. That integration between technology and humans, particularly when it comes to the human being on that last validation point that you made. So you've got everything baked in, and then how do we get the human, professionals to then be empowered and receptive to engage. My last question. So we've spent a lot of time talking about recruitment. We just
Mhm.
touched a little bit about retention. I know in the state of Kentucky, the Great Admissions Redesign Project, we do have friends and colleagues on the high school side that are working with supporting students as they're exploring colleges and really trying to prioritize their decision making. Could you maybe highlight a couple of the tools that you've gone throughout the course of this series that you think from the high school, college support, college access side whether it's a college counselor or a bridge counselor or some sort that you think would really be effective, to create a synergy between the college side and the high school side?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is like writing letters of recommendation sometimes can be very, very time consuming. And
Yes.
so that's I would see that being a huge, a huge kind of boost for a lot of the counselors and how they're thinking through that. Having the ability to look at and digest all of the, the transcripts and all that. That's another way that chat, you can give a picture and it's able to actually reason around that picture. So that's another really, really interesting way to start thinking about it. Um, Again, we don't want those essays to be written by AI at the end of the day, but that's a lot of students are already using that. So how do we change our kind of handoff there to say, you know what, we're assuming that those are going to be written by AI. Maybe from the institutional side, we provide some, perhaps put a lot more weight on providing out of the box questions that are like, okay, use ChatGPT to do these things, and
Right.
we assume that they're already using the tools. So I mean, we can come up with a whole lot of different tools or different techniques of how we can kind of bridge those two things together. But the recommendation part from the college side becomes really important because now they can personalize that the recommendation based. They can look at a lot of data that the student has, and then it can make recommendations. They can also personalize, the handoff or the outreach. They can do a lot of the planning part. So you can think about it in that particular way.
Very good. Well, we're at time, so I'm going to make some final wrap-up comments to our audience. And first and foremost, I want to make a wrap-up comment to you, sir. Artist, it has been an absolute pleasure having you guide us on this journey around this novel and very new and very important and essential product or technology, rather, that is such a big part of our lives now and will continue to grow as a part of our lives. And I'm happy to have brought you into the state of Kentucky as a colleague, friend, and as a respected leader in this industry. And I think that the work that you're doing with Element 451 is exciting. For all of those who are out there, I want to encourage everybody to visit the website, check out the podcast as well. And consider, looking at Element 451 as a partner, as we as a state of Kentucky have consciously elected to do in this regard. So thank you to you, artists. This has been a very substantive and informative series. To the audience, I want to say thank you all for watching, whether you are watching live or you are watching in a recording, whether you're watching as a part of the state of Kentucky, who I'm working personally with, or across the United States with the other admissions redesign projects. This series, my hope is that you're taking what you see and you consider sitting your leaders and your enrollment stakeholders in a room and just hit play and to rewatch every one of these installments so that you're getting everybody on your team to a level of literacy around artificial intelligence to where they feel a sense of empowerment to actually think about a world and think about their work in a way that the type of students that are coming into college, it's already baked into their psyche and how they're looking to move forward. So I want to really encourage each and every one of you all to do that. Artist is an example of someone that is bringing a really strong and substantive knowledge of the operationalization, the software, the technology, and then I come in terms of really helping to shepherd the human population into the innovation and the creativity that it takes to think about where you've come, where you are, and where you want to go, leveraging what we use within our company at Marbridge Consulting Solutions, which is design thinking and design planning mechanisms. And so we're excited to be able to shepherd Kentucky through this year as we reimagine our admissions with artificial intelligence as one of many discovery projects that we'll be integrating into our consideration processes. And by the end of the 2025 cycle, we're going to have a brand new reimagined way that we're going to be approaching admissions. So to all of our audience members who have taken time in a very volatile, very busy, in a very demanding enrollment cycle, we thank you all. And for anyone that's watching that is new to enrollment and it's considers yourself a stakeholder in enrollment and wants to go the distance in terms of leading your team, you've got some partners like myself and artists along the way. Thank you to the Lumina Foundation. Thank you to the Kentucky Council of Post-Secondary Education, the Kentucky Success Collaborative for having us. And thank you to you all. Have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your summer and rest of the cycle. May your deposits and your enrollments be strong. Take care.
Bye, everyone.